Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Village of Ruidoso Workshop for the council. It is October the 3rd. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. And if you'll stand with me, we'll do the Pledge of Allegiance. Moment of silence first, please. Pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I salute the flag of the state of New Mexico, the Zia symbol of perfect friendship among united cultures.
All right, thank you, everyone. Can I get a roll call, please?
Mayor Crawford?
Here.
Councilor Eby?
Here.
Councilor Letterman?
Oh, is she on vacation?
She's up there.
And Gary Jackson?
Is she? Online. Councilor Jackson?
Here.
Councilor Salas?
Here.
Councilor Hooker?
Here.
Councilor Coughlin?
Here.
Councilor Letterman?
Susan?
She's just muted. Unmuted and muted again.
Yeah.
Hello.
Councilor Letterman?
I'm here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll move on to the agenda items. And then I think Councilor Eby is going to join me Thursday, going to Santa Fe
Yes.
for the New Mexico Municipal League, whatever meeting. I have so many. Strategic planning and something else. All right, discussion on proposed Ruidoso Fire Department pay plan and step plan.
Agenda
Oh, what now?
on that. Oh, we're gonna talk about it now. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, Mayor, councilors. Good morning.
Good morning.
So, good morning. In the last meeting, you all asked us to come back and bring you more defined options and kind of put together a better plan of what we're looking at in regards to pay plans for our firefighters. In doing so, this team, these three, have done an extreme amount of work in making sure that everything is streamlined and kind of making sure that some of the questions that were asked previously were answered. And some of those questions are pay bands too wide? Are they too small? We've kind of consolidated some of the options that you originally had. And so what you have in front of you is kind of what we're calling the modernization of the fire department overall. As you review these pay plans, you have three plans in front of you. One plan specifically starts at $15.50. The next pay plan starts at $16, and then the third pay plan starts at $17. The three pay plans offer three things that are very similar in nature. One, they all increase the initial amount of pay for your uncertified versus your certified firefighters. There is an increase in the gap of what that uncertified versus the certified firefighter is to help with those incentives, to make sure that our firefighters are in fact trying to get that training and move to that next level. The second thing that you'll notice is that it includes a new officer position, which is the battalion position. We'll talk about that a little bit more, but those are included in all three options as well. The third item that you'll see in this, and it's included across the board, and we have to do it one way or another. Because our department currently has people that have been here for an extremely long period of time in certain positions, no matter what pay band we put in place, there's gonna be people that are gonna be impacted that do not get a raise. That's just the reality of what happens. What we call that is redlining. So for example, if someone's been here for 15 years in the same position with any of these new pay bands, you may have those 10 steps. If they're at step 8 right now and they're at year 3, it may be 5 years, and that's an exaggerated estimate, but it may be 3 years before they actually receive their initial next step. That doesn't mean that they're not gonna receive their 2% increase every single year. So they will still receive some type of increase annually. It just may not be that step until they hit that right amount of year where they're at. That's the case across the board in any department, not just fire. If someone's been here forever, and you saw that when you all did your pay plan increases with some of the village employees, some of them didn't get increases or they got incremental increases, very small amounts, because they were here so long in those positions. Unfortunately, that's how pay plans work with steps. And so that's gonna be an impact. What we've done and what this team has done is they have worked to reduce the overall amount of people that are gonna be impacted that way. So we have tried to make sure that everyone that's involved will see that impact. So they should be able to get a raise. That's our goal, at least for these pay plans. So as we start, the first pay plan that you're gonna look at is the $15 an hour pay plan. We broke them down into three major numbers for you to be able to see easily. You have your additional salaries and benefits for those current firefighters that are on staff now. In this pay plan area, you'll see a $237,000 increase, which would bring everyone up to that new pay plan bands for the $15.50 an hour. When we say non-budgeted salary and benefits, these are the new 6 firefighters that are coming over from airport. We say non-budgeted because technically they're not in the budget for the fire department. That's the only reason we're moving them over that way. Obviously, that's gonna be our biggest impact because we had to budget not only the increases, but their actual salaries for the move over. You'll see roughly about $548,000 on that second item for a total impact for the $15 an hour for $786,474. So that's the lowest impact that you're gonna see if council chooses to adopt any type of pay plan increase for the firefighters. Any questions on that initial one?
You said 6 from the airport being transferred back?
Yes, Counselor
Okay.
Salas. So we had six firefighters at the airport and 7 working at the airport that are coming over to the fire department, which will make 9 people on shift per day in the village, so.
Right, okay. For some reason, I thought it was just 3 and they were always rotating, but.
We had
no,
6
it's
out there,
6
so
out
yes,
there.
yes, sir.
Okay.
There was two fire department personnel every shift, every 2 days at the fire department. So we have an A shift, a B shift, and a C shift, so that gives you the 6 employees that were out there
Okay,
at the airport.
okay.
So I have a question. If we transfer those 6 individuals from the airport back into the fire department, do we need to come up with 6 new positions at the airport to fill those?
Yep.
So this is kind of that question of that double jeopardy item that Judy was able to discuss with us last time. That is correct. So, and Judy, I'm sure can explain it much better than I can. I'll give you the 50,000-foot version of what I understand. So the general fund in the airport originally subsidized roughly about half of the cost, or $300,000, for some of the firefighters that are currently there now. And the main reason for that is because the airport's an enterprise fund, we have to make sure that they're either even or in the black. So we were supplementing those costs, moving those funds over. As we shift that back, those monies all have to be moved over. And I believe, Councilmember Salas, that's where you're referring to the 3 and 3 and kind of the budgeted part. That money still has to move over. So what, in essence, you're doing is creating new positions at the airport, plus you're having to move over those funds. So you're showing kind of a double amount of what will have to be budgeted in the system moving forward. So yes, there will be that double impact to the system.
So these numbers aren't
5 employees at the airport.
aren't the entire cost. This is
This is-
just for the fire
This
department
is
side.
just for fire.
Okay, and then those 6 positions that would be added at the airport, would those be fire positions? So basically, we can take this information, or no, they'll do double duty out there, they'll be line techs and trained on ARF and all that?
Councilor Coughlin, that is correct, and it's gonna be 5 positions. It's going from 6 positions down to 5 positions. We have a line tech supervisor and 4 line techs. They will be ARF certified, they'll be medic certified, they'll be line tech certified. So they will be doing the jobs out there that the fire department was doing, and that's how it used to be prior to the fire department taking over out there. And we're adding, it's going to 5 employees versus 6 employees out there. And it'll be adequate coverage and service for the airport with that.
Do we have any idea what that cost is gonna be for those 5 people?
It's roughly 745,000.
So add another 750?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Now, the two things, and we were gonna cover this at the end, but we'll go ahead and discuss them as part of the items, is overtime is also a big issue that we've been seeing both at the airport and both as part of fire. Because the new staffing levels allow us to move over more people, and because there's more people on shift both with fire and you're not covering the same amount of time out at the airport, the reduction in the amount of time that you need for overtime at the airport also drops, as well as with fire. And the main reason behind fire, and Chief, please correct me if I'm wrong, but right now, we basically run a skeleton crew of 7 firefighters that are operational in the village. With the addition of the new firefighters, we'll have 9 on staff. What that means is that if a person in the current system left, we would have to pay overtime to backfill that position. With the new firefighters and with 2 new individuals, you don't have to backfill that position, but we still have adequate coverage to respond to fires as needed. So the overtime that it would have cost you to have a person come in and backfill isn't accounted for anymore. We won't have that impact to the general fund, but we'll still be paying a salary, which is lower than what your time and a half cost is moving forward. So we're gonna see an incremental drop. We're not sure what that is yet. We can project out and say, hey, if 2 people are off, you're still not gonna have to pay overtime, but we don't have a schedule of, oh, well, there's 10 people that are gonna be off today, and we have to backfill 4 or 6, or whatever the case is. But there will be a reduction in overtime, which we will be reviewing and updating, especially to the council, as we're moving forward, so that we can keep track of that accurately, if any one of these plans does in fact move forward.
But that assumes you have every position filled. If you have any vacancies, you're still gonna have to backfill.
Yes.
Yes.
That is a yes. Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, so a reduction is a pie in the sky. The reality is across the board in almost all departments, we're never 100% full anymore. So there's going to be some backfilling, there's going to be some overtime.
That is a possibility, that is true. With the 9 people, I mean, we can do shift changes, we don't have to we can do shift changes if somebody needs to take off for a specific thing and not pay overtime. They can go from, okay, I'm gonna trade you shifts, I'm gonna trade you days off. I'm gonna trade this day for that day with an employee, and we don't have to pay that person overtime. So there are other options that we can look at in moving people around that we could save our overtime. And with this overtime cut, we don't have to have 2 people out at the airport all the time. So that's gonna be part of the savings as well, because a lot of our overtime was paid because we had to keep 2 people at the airport at all times for the firefighting and ARF services and line tech services. So with this move, the fire department won't have that, incur that cost of overtime. And the airport will have their staffing out there throughout their days. So we won't see as big of an impact on our overtime budget.
Mayor, if I may, having sat there before and talked these things out, it's scary. I'm scared for you to be saying all this about lack of overtime, or we're not gonna have it as much, because then when it comes up, then you're gonna be sitting here going, well, things changed, or, well, I mean, you just gotta be careful.
I understand that, Councilor Hooker. So when the fire department took over, that's what Cody had said, that it's gonna help the overtime. Well, being that the airport had to have 2 people on duty every day out there, that's where he was mistaken in that, because every time somebody would take off out there, we'd have to cover that out there. And with us pulling the guys into town and the airport having their own staffing, it's gonna cut that portion of the overtime.
Good, hopefully so.
And Councilor Hooker, you make a very good point. If we're, and so does Councilor Coughlin, if we're fully staffed and everything works great in a perfect world, this works out 100%. What I am not saying is that your overtime will drop to 0. That's not the case at all. We are hoping to cut overtime roughly by 15 to 20% conservatively. If we can do that, then we've made an impact at least on what the budget is, and those costs will offset moving forward what we're looking at from a salary perspective. So I am by no means trying to say this is the magic bullet and we are gonna go to 0 and you're gonna save millions of dollars here. That's not the case. So, but thank you for pointing that out.
But your reduction is talking about the fire department budget, not the overall impact to the village with the airport now having to fill 5 positions.
So that's item number 3 that we're gonna
Okay.
have to get to.
Because I'm looking at the big picture, not just this little slice here. that
You're
we're
looking at the financial impact where it states that if we do these increases, that would take the general funds personnel cost to a total budget of 75%. What is it, what's the number say, Joe, when you hit over?
75% is a healthy municipality as far as the personnel budget,
Yes.
your employees.
If, depending on the situation, I recalculated once I got the numbers, and right now we'll be at 56 to 60 with the final numbers and the added, alternatives with the revenues that they're.
So the 75% is immaterial.
Yeah, once we figured out, the offsets that they're gonna compensate to help pay for
And
this.
then start having pay for services? Yep.
Yeah.
Could I
Mr.
ask,
Mayor, you jumped ahead of me.
I know, I'm just
I
excited
apologize.
because this is like pulling a Band-Aid off, just get it on.
I'll move through.
And I know
it then.
you guys done a ton
apologize.
of work.
So the same thing then, I'll go ahead and consolidate some of those items in the conversation. Item 2 is the exact same thing, with the exception of an impact of $828,000 to the overall, fund. And then item number 3 is an overall impact of $926,000. So those are basically the same rules that apply to option 1, apply to option 2 and option 3. Now, there are some recommendations that we have. Some I would strongly recommend that we move forward with. Others, I think, should be evaluated by the council as possible concerns. Some of the items that we've identified is that fire does have 2 funds. Those 2 funds are the fire fund and the EMP fund. Or RMP, I'm sorry. RMP, thank you for the correction, Chief. RMP is, I watched too many movies last night with my son that had EMPs going off, so. RMP is when we send our firefighters out and they're doing the wildland firefighting. We get reimbursed for some of those items related to cost, and that's how we usually buy equipment for fire. Those funds, and some of those funds can move over to the general fund as part of the impact. However, I would caution that right now, some of the funds that we do use for operations, fire uses to bring in equipment and to update and to move forward on some of those items. If it does go into the general fund, we would be able to manage it. However, there will be times that, as in most cases with elected councils and situations that happen financially, you may say, hey, this is not gonna be the year we're gonna give it back. We may have to move it into another area because it's a rough year. And so those kinds of decisions are obviously going to weigh on council to make if those funds are transferred. That does impact the fire department. Will they be able to continue buying certain vehicles or certain things as we move forward? If they don't request it and it's not given to them during the budget session, then no, they won't. And so that could hinder them from that kind of development. But that is a general concern. But there are those funds that can move over to help wash some of those costs that you would see as an impact to the general fund. Now, where I believe we're modernizing as a village and where we're trying to catch up and play catch up is as a fire marshal office, and during our operations. So one of the basic things that we look at is, do we charge for our services? Are we recouping our fees that we should be doing across the village? In fire, we're not doing that. I have an example of the assistant chief going out that I'd like to give you. So usually when an application is submitted for a building application, they're reviewing all of these items. So building inspectors go out, take a look at plumbing, take a look at all these other items. Well, fire also inspects based on fire suppression, firewalls, and these other items, which we should be charging a fee for, and we are not. And there's a fee schedule. I can't say everything is $25 or $75, or there's a range depending on the type of inspection they're doing. But for,
Let
yes,
me
sir.
stop you right there. So when have you started going out on building inspections for fire stuff? I know you do business for.
I've been doing it since I've been here, but officially, we did an agreement with New Mexico State Fire Marshal's Office about a month and a half ago.
At least, yeah.
Oh, it's longer than that.
And so they have turned over everything to me,
Okay,
and they're stepping out. They,
I didn't know that, Mayor,
Yeah, we
that we
approved
were,
Business inspections all,
Might have missed that meeting or something.
okay.
Was the state charging for their visits?
I don't know if they do or not. They never charge me.
They may charge for plan reviews. I don't know if they're charging for inspections.
So Counselor Salas, the Ruidoso Fire Department has always done building inspections in town. We
Not in
do
my house.
buildings for businesses, business.
For businesses,
Yes, sir.
yes.
Yes, sir. And that's the primary thing we're focused on, is what we're focusing on with
Right,
this,
and I
these
was
fees.
aware of that. I didn't know about residential building or anything of that.
Residential would only go to if you have some sort of license in your home, like a
Short-term rental.
short-term rental, or you're
Okay.
running a daycare, or an adoptive home, or something
Right.
like that.
Okay.
So
Thank
these are fees that are scheduled out in general, that most of the larger, so one of the things that we've identified is that most of these communities that are in fact paying this higher rate that we're trying to compete with already collect these fees to help offset the costs that they're collecting and paying. So obviously, we don't want to price our residents or our businesses out of doing business. That's not what we want to do. But we do need to at least identify whether we're collecting the appropriate costs back to help offset the costs that we're paying, our resources that we're utilizing, those kinds of things. And so there's been several discussions about, can we collect on insurance, can we not? In our initial assessment, insurance is great that we can bill against if you have ambulances and if the ambulances are yours. If they're not, you're gonna miss out on small costs. So stuff off of the truck, honestly, in my opinion, it's not worth to collect the insurance off of this because we would actually be required to hire someone that is specifically knowledgeable in bill coding, that would be able to do those things. It would actually may cost us more to pay that person than to see what we can collect. So that insurance piece may not be for us. It may be for us as we move down the line, but it may be something that we have to evaluate. Now, the business inspections, those are definitely things that we have to look at. Plan reviews, those are also definitely things we have to look at. So in the example that I'd like to give, AC went out and he was looking at a fire suppression line. That fire suppression line didn't go through an official plan review that he was on to take a look at. So the person that put something in actually put PEX piping in on a fire suppression line. When they did that, he came out and said, hey, this isn't gonna work. And they still continued to do it. And so he's gone out there multiple times, at least 4 or 5 times, not wasting, but using hours of his time trying to get this organization to come into compliance. If you do an initial review, which is built in a formula, IBC has a formula that determines certain types of these costs. These are all standard costs that come out on a formula. It's usually based on square footage, type of business, usage. You plug that in and it comes out with, hey, you should be charging this amount for fire suppression. That's how it should work. And so those fees are calculated based on average. If you go out on a second visit because there's something else, there's usually a penalty for having to go out because you didn't acquiesce the first time to say, hey, let's change it out. Third and fourth visits, those are things where you should be able to say, you guys either gotta stop or you're not gonna pass. And so we're not doing those things right now because there isn't any teeth to the permitting. There's no cost to say, hey, this is how many times you come out. This isn't a once in a week occurrence or things like that. This is starting to become our normal. He's going out on an average of 10 to 20 calls a week. That's the initial call. The follow-up calls we're not even documenting yet. And so the time that we're taking to actually go out is significant. As we move to this new structure, especially under battalion chiefs, and we start to look to certify some of our other officers or individuals that can start doing these inspections as well, this would happen to them. So if you now have 10 or 15 of these inspections that you're starting to respond to over and over again, we don't want to bill for them. What we're trying to do is get people to come into compliance the first time. So they pay that initial rate, we recoup our costs. But if we have to move forward, there should be some type of financial compensation for the department having to go out. That money all comes back into the general fund. I was asked to see if we could try and put together a general amount of what we think our expectation is of what revenues could be generated. We're trying to do that as we speak. So based on the number of calls that we receive and based on what information we have to turn into the fire system, we have a breakout of those calls. We haven't identified a very conservative fire fee yet of what that would look like, so I don't have a number for you. At least a strong one that can say, hey, this is what we can generate every year. What I can tell you is that we roughly get about, how many calls was it, Chief, a year in general? Overall,
For the inspections?
yes.
It's gonna be 10 to 15 calls a week, plus
Probably
re-inspections.
plus re-inspections. So on average, you're gonna receive a couple hundred calls a month. Over that, you're receiving a couple thousand calls for the year. So at minimum, what minimum charges would be is a $25 initial inspection fee for some of these. It's $150 for some initial inspection fees for fire suppression. There's several different costs, and so we would at least recoup a couple of thousand, if not several $1,000 initially as we start rolling out this program. As businesses start to move into becoming compliant with these items, we'll start to accurately recapture a number. But I don't want to give you a number and say, hey, this is the number that's going to be here, and it's an artificial inflated number. I don't want to give you that, so.
So on plan reviews related to like PECs for fire suppression, I mean, I even know that sounds like a stupid idea. But are we not doing plan reviews currently?
We're just starting to.
We're just
since the
starting?
state- Since the state signed that agreement.
Okay, so the state handled that before?
Yes.
All the plan reviews, it wasn't handled here at the village for,
The building department may have done theirs.
Yeah.
But the fire stuff was all done.
but
by the state
that's
government.
what I mean, the fire part. So we, as the village, only do the building stuff, we don't do the fire, before this agreement? Okay,
Until now.
okay.
Yes, sir.
And just so you know, that, there's fire alarm plans, there's sprinkler plans, there's kitchen hood suppression plans, and
Right.
then there's overall egress plans that are gonna start coming in. So one building could end up having 4 to 5 different sets of
Right, got
plans
it.
to review.
Okay.
And usually, in those cases, it's one side of plan reviews, but there's an additional cost for the overall item.
Right.
So it you're not just charging $25, you may charge $150 for all plan review, or whatever the case may be. But again, there's an ICC formula that allows for us to plug into that one, that's slightly different than the IBC.
Okay.
So in that MOU that you said you agreed with the state here just a little over a month ago, is there anything in that MOU about allowing you to charge fees or disallowing?
Mentioned at all.
Pardon?
It's not mentioned at all.
It's not mentioned, so, but that's a common practice that you're saying that
It
is
common.
statewide for,
Other municipalities in New Mexico do charge.
because if that's a responsibility that you've taken on, I would think that's something you ought to be looking at. And I did have one more question, another, that going back to the, when you were talking about when Council, Mayor Pro Tem Salas asked about the 6 moving from the, airport and then having to be replaced. Now, Chief Kozlowski stated that you had to retain 5, you had to fill 5 positions of the 6 back out at the airport. And he stated the reasons why. But you're saying the budgeted salaries and benefits at $548,000, and in the first pay plan option, which is, I'm sure is gonna be a little more than what it costs to begin with, but you stated that the 5 were gonna cost 700 and some odd thousand to replace or to keep at the airport. So that, which is quite a bit more than what the non-budgeted salaries and benefits are right now.
The two numbers that I'm using at the 745,000, that's my worst case scenario. So if we have to move over both and it's at the higher amount, we're saying that's gonna be our impact. So that's worst case for us. Yes, sir.
Okay, so then I was gonna ask then, are these 5 new employees, are they subject to this particular pay plan, or is there a different pay scale for them?
They will be, go ahead, Chief.
The employees at the airport fall under the pay band that was adopted by the village previously. So there is a pay band for the line techs and the line tech supervisors already in place. It's listed on the pay plan.
For the airport?
For the airport, yes. They just fall under the regular village's pay plan.
But the new firefighters coming over.
The new firefighters will fall into this pay plan but the line techs that they're hiring at the airport will fall under the village overall pay plan.
All right, so, but you'd be able to call on them in case you needed it as far as emergency for personnel if you needed someone to fill in?
The ones at the airport, possibly, it depends on their certifications that they end up getting, because some of them are just gonna have ARF and their EMT stuff, they may not have the structural firefighting.
The idea right now, council member, is not that we call on the airport staff to backfill any firefighters at this moment in time. The idea in moving our current firefighters from the airport over is that we'll have adequate staffing to make sure that we have coverage within the village, as needed. That's the goal.
And one other thing, if we do need some assistance out at the airport, my firefighters are trained as line techs, they're trained as our firefighters. They could go out there and assist them if they need to out there.
Now they are, but in the future they won't be.
We can keep the certifications if we need to assist. If we need somebody to help out on holiday weekends, and I've got certain firefighters that keep their line tech certifications.
Okay.
They can go out there and work on a weekend to help on the busy weekends to help cover. So I'm planning on keeping those going. those
Okay.
certifications going.
added overtime.
But who pays for them when they go out to?
Mayor,
Yes,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tim. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, sorry, I just was asking, if you're gonna transfer employees out there to help on the busy weekends, who pays for them while they're at the airport? Does that come out of the airport budget or out of yours?
I would assume we'd take it out of the airport budget, kind of like working at the Wibbit. That would be a special overtime for a special project.
But didn't we talk about, at one point, if employees are going, like, to help out at the Wibbit pays a certain pay, and that's the pay you get, not what your current position pays?
no, I don't think that was what we,
We
Mayor
talked
Crawford.
about it, but.
We didn't ever
yeah,
do it.
That wasn't, I forgot how that worked out.
Okay.
Judy had, Mayor Crawford, members of the council, Judy, whenever they work the Wibbit or any weekend event, Judy has a special projects that she sets up for that, where they're paid out of.
But they're getting paid their salary.
If they're working overtime, they're getting paid overtime.
Their normal position
Yep.
salary, not.
Yes,
that.
yes,
Charge the overtime that they worked at their current rate.
To the Wibbit.
To the Wibbit.
yes.
Gotcha.
so we do the same thing to the airport. Okay. And that would be roughly just like Memorial Day, Labor Day, maybe 4th of July, those type of things.
Correct.
The other item I think that's important to identify is.
Hold on, Mike.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I think
Susan.
Susan
Oh,
had a
yes, ma'am.
comment.
Councilmember Litter.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What I was wondering, charges, we're the only police department that has paid firemen. And I know that it's very good for us to be good neighbors.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Do
You
we
said-
charge when
Did you mean to say police department or fire department? You meant to
fire
say fire
department? I'm
department.
sorry.
Okay, we're with
Yeah, I
you.
apologize.
No problem.
Do we charge, like if we go on different emergencies to other communities, do we charge for our fire department to go and help out, say with City of Ruidoso Downs or wherever we're going in Lincoln County? Do we get a fee back for that?
No, ma'am. So as a municipality, usually, in general, municipalities have mutual aid agreements with other municipalities. And so in the case of emergencies, we respond accordingly. And if there's assistance that's needed, we usually provide that assistance. And it's the same back and forth. The only real funds that we acquire if we send someone out is the RMP funds, and that's where we would collect certain items. But in most cases, municipalities in general don't collect something unless it's a disaster. And in that case, the disaster really spells out how much you'd be collecting.
Okay.
And the only other thing would be, what percentage of fires are structure fires, home fires, as opposed to the grass is on fire out in the ditch or lightning strike that we have to do? Do you have a percentage for that? Where I'm going is what we talked about earlier. Homeowners insurance, I think you can get up to $1,000 is all if you file on it.
Yes, sir.
So it's not going to be a big number, but it would be something. But who would file that paperwork?
Correct. And so, if we went the insurance route on home fires, and I don't think we have that percentage right now.
And I don't have the percentage. I know last year I was just working on printing out the amount of calls that we had last year that we put into our fire grant. We had 17 structure fires that we responded to last year.
So if you followed that formula and received roughly $1,000 per structure fire, you get 17,000. For the person that would have to maybe submit that information, you may be paying double
Well,
that.
whose job would that be? We have yet to identify who's going to be,
I'm not sure if anyone,
who's doing billings, what I'm asking.
Correct.
If we're billing for AC, how we handling? Is he handling his own billing? I mean, he'd be filling out the
Internally
paperwork.
If he were doing plan reviews.
oh, yes, sir. That would be internally, he would be doing it, or whoever would be doing the plan review would be submitting that.
And just as an example with the insurance claims, we've had a few people who have called and said, hey, I'm getting dropped, this is what they're telling me. So I've gone out, done a survey with pictures and a full report, and that's something we don't charge for, but they're getting their insurance back.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time to do it, but that mechanism is there, but that's something we do not charge for.
And I've visited with quite a few insurance agents and brokers over the last month because of the calls that we're getting, that some of the bigger companies, I'm not talking about State Farm, I'm not talking, they're limiting their coverage. But if you come back on a case by case and they have the village's defensible space and they've met the certification and we have the water assets and stuff, then they're getting their insurance. And so that has been helping. I know State Farm said their portfolio for this region is max, pretty much Farm Bureau said the same thing. But there are abilities, and this happens time to time, being in the insurance business myself. Florida, I've seen it, the hurricane, Tornado Alley in Texas and Oklahoma, I've seen it. So I know that it'll eventually shift over, but it's still gonna be expensive, all of it. But it goes back to that ISO rating.
Yes, sir.
So.
That's the other item that this assists with ISO. And so I know there's a concern of, will it help us lock in this rate specifically? No, we can't guarantee that it will lock in this rate. However, this allows us to accrue more points on that total amount. Whether we lose some in one area, we can gain some in another by having more coverage. The battalion chiefs allow us to have different officers in the field. By doing that, that allows us to collect more points on our ISO certification. So that we do accrue more points, but there's no guarantee that we keep our current rating, and there's no guarantee that the points that we do get offset those that we lose. So our goal is to try and accrue as many points as we can. It's just like a housing application. If we can do something to adjust in one area and try and hit that standard, we're gonna do it. And so that's what we're moving towards as well. And I know the chief, both chiefs are coming up with an idea to help accrue more points based on this new plan, if it passes, on how we would be able to staff, on where we could station certain other vehicles in a response period. And so this would allow us the opportunity, if it moves forward in any one of these capacities, to be able to try and achieve that higher ISO rating so that our residents can also continue to acquire insurance. One of the items I think that's important that I found out that I wasn't aware of is, as we were doing this research and looking at fees, we currently should be enforcing current fees. In our current fire code, we have false alarm fees. And so what that means is, if a false alarm is called at a house, anytime between 0 and 4 times, you're not gonna charge the person. But if it happens after the 4th, 5th, or 6th time, there should be a penalty for having to result. And so I think the important understanding is that, again, we don't want to charge our residents and price them out of being able to feel comfortable and if there's a fire. But I do think that there may need to be an education program that we roll out, just to say, hey, make sure if there's a fire, you're accurately notifying us. If not, and we do have to go out, every time we put a truck out onto the ground and it rolls out, there's a cost associated with that. And I think we have to be careful, because the more miles we put on these vehicles, the more resources we spend, we are in fact losing money And we're not recouping that in any way, shape, or form. So the way the current fee schedule reads, I believe in the ordinance, is 0 to 4 is $0. Anything from 4 to 7, I
4
think,
to 7 or 4 to 9, I can't remember.
is $70 or $75. And then after that, it goes up.
So again, in keeping the numbers, we went through this with the police department.
Yes, sir.
On, the false alarms, the people who have the blink and they're calling you from Texas and then the cops show up and there's nothing going on. So how many of those have we had, false alarms?
We had 112 this last year.
112.
False alarm calls that we put on our fire grant application. Well, yes.
And how many out of that 112 would qualify as chargeable? We didn't know how many of them were over 4.
We didn't do the research to find out how many of those were repeats. We just know we had that many total false alarm calls. We can do the research. I can go back into my call logs.
Well, I don't think it's significant. That's the point.
It may
I'm
not be,
making.
but
But I mean, it is a headache to roll everybody out, get the big truck, you find out that,
You're running $1 million worth, millions of dollars worth of equipment.
Right.
For a false alarm. And some of our stuff comes from businesses, the hospital. We get several from the hospital a year. K-Bob's, we've seen them have several a year. So there's some other
well,
business.
they had one in Congress the other day.
Oh, yeah, they did.
Oh, yeah,
I didn't see any comments on Facebook on that one.
I didn't hear about it.
Oh, he didn't want to have a vote, so he pulled the,
Pulled the alarm.
Yeah. I don't have TV right now, so I'm out of the loop.
so I get
There's
that.
some fees we could collect. It's not gonna be,
So do you think we have the bookwork, the capability, who's going to be documenting this information? Where's the bill coming from?
So one of the things I think that we're identifying as we're going through this is that some of the data that we're housing or that we do have needs to just be evaluated. And we can identify personnel within that to say, okay, who's submitting what information where and who should be tracking this. And that shouldn't be something that's difficult now. The billing item may be a little more difficult just because all of us, I know I'm not certified in medical billing. I'm not sure if anyone else is. That's gonna be the component that may be difficult on the insurance side, just because it does use a lot of medical billing. Again, I'm not sure on that component, but we initially identified that may be complicated. But this other stuff, who's calling, how many times, that tracking, we already have some of those items that we're keeping track of.
On the homeowner's insurance, you just find out their policy, that's basically it, and contact them.
And over the years, I've talked to several insurance companies and agents, and usually if the policyholder can recuperate the money that they spend on these services, because usually they're gonna end up getting a 5 to 30% reduction on their insurance and their underwriting for having a good inspection. So everybody can kind of recoup
If they're active.
if they're active, yes.
And that has come up to us, obviously, to educate people. How to do.
Other information that we thought was just helpful was comparisons. We do want to let you know that this group has done comparisons throughout the region, roughly about 150 miles out on what we were looking at from the costs. So the average was roughly about $16. I know there's a discussion sometimes between PD and FD and what that looks like. Are they compared? Are they equal? When we did the evaluation also, there was roughly about a $3.50 to $4 difference in those prices. We're way below that. So one of these would actually bring us up to that difference.
So why are we comparing PD to fire? Why don't
It
we
was
compare it
just
to
a-
Parks and Rec or the Water Department? How about the senior staff? Planning and zoning, can we bring those up? I mean, that's why I'm saying, what does one have to do with the other?
They're just usually compared in general when you're doing rate comparisons, and that's the only reason we wanted to present that to you, because they both fall under the public safety umbrella. That was just informational that we decided to put in place. Outside of that, again, this is, if this does move forward, this would assist with any type of modernization. If it doesn't move forward, our goal is to still try and modernize something internally so where we can start at least looking at possibly recapturing these items, especially now that the state has kind of passed this on. But we, as you all know, staffing is still something that has to be evaluated if a pay plan and the change doesn't move forward. So those are things that are still up in the air.
Go ahead, sir.
So now we've said all that, let's do the, if we can, the battalion chief. Again, and I'm total disclosure coming from a former jurisdiction, that fire department had battalion chiefs instead of captains. It was set up exactly the same, but it was just, to me, titled differently. But now we're putting in another layer, i.e., what about staying with captains, a lieutenant, and having a second lieutenant? Just throwing that,
So we could title it however we want to title it. We just figured the battalion chief, we looked at a lot of municipalities through the area, and so, like you said, Councilor Hooker, some have battalion chiefs, captains and lieutenants, some have battalion chiefs and lieutenants. We can title it however we need to, however the council likes, but those positions, having an officer at each station assists us with increasing our ISO ratings. We can, just as long as it's titled some type of officer, that helps us with our ISO rating.
Okay, so then if tomorrow the magic wand's waved and now you've got battalion chiefs, what does that look like as far as those captains? Do they just automatically move up to it? Are they gonna have to test for it? Is it gonna be open to the whole department? I'm just throwing stuff against the wall, and sometimes you know what that is, but just asking those questions.
So we have been discussing testing them or going straight across the board with the name change. It's something that we haven't made 100% decision on. But I know if we add that bottom layer, that position is going to be promoting people up. So we'll be testing for that bottom position. These battalion chiefs or captains, whatever we want to call that top position, they're going to be involved in inspections. All of them are already certified inspectors, building fire inspectors, so we can have them start doing those and assisting the fire marshal's office with those. So there's additional duties that we're going to assign to them, but on the testing, we hadn't made a final decision on how that was going to work.
Okay, thank you.
So if we have the title and you say it gives us more points, is there not any kind of actual accreditation that goes with the title, or it's just now then we're we give you a title? Is that what we're saying?
Yes, sir.
If there's no testing?
Yes,
And
sir.
it still counts?
Yes, sir.
Huh.
So do we currently have 3 levels of leadership, of
Officers, no, sir.
officers? We have 2.
Yes, sir.
So we're adding a third one,
Yes, sir.
because you have 3 shifts. That way you can have 1 at each station for each shift.
Yes, sir, Councilor Kaufman, we'll have if it goes battalion chief, we'll have a battalion chief at Station 1, a captain at Station 2, and a lieutenant at Station 3. That will give you an officer at each station every shift.
Right, got it.
And by definition, in the fire service, a battalion chief is a fire officer that oversees multiple stations. And so that was the reason behind calling them a battalion chief.
Any other questions? Okay. All right. I think that we'll definitely have this on discussion. Everybody will be able to review questions, and when you have additional questions you need to ask of these folks, they'll be available to answer anything you need.
I have one more question.
Okay.
So what was the initial reason behind changing the pay plan?
Changing it from what, Councilor?
The pay plans, we've got 3 different pay plans, and you're looking at increasing each of them? What was the original thought behind increasing and providing 3 different options for pay plans?
We had initially came up with some options, and we presented them to the mayor, and
The impetus of the thing was people were threatening, allegedly, they were going to quit and go to work somewhere else.
Okay. So then what's going to happen if we go ahead and approve this with then the police department saying, well, we want it too, which happened the last time.
Yeah, yeah.
And then all of a sudden, then we've got dispatchers who aren't making enough money. We're having a hard time attracting dispatchers. And then we have CDLs and we have park maintenance workers. We have, you name it, across the board, we have it. So again, looking at the big picture, this is one slice, but if we go ahead and act on one slice, it affects the whole pie.
Absolutely.
That then becomes, instead of $1 million or whatever we're talking about, that can be a lot of money. And like you have talked about, other communities have gone, well, yeah, just keep doing it all. How are you gonna handle this next year and the year after? I don't know.
And they're operating at deficits right now, and they're starting to sweat it.
Yeah.
And sustainability is the key.
But I think too, in, again, defense of any department out there, they gotta ask.
Oh, yeah, no, you have to ask. You have to ask. What is the current, okay, option number one is the lowest, increase. It's $15.50 uncertified, $17 certified. What is the current pay?
Current starting for non-certified is $13 an hour, and for certified is $13.52 an hour.
$13.50.
And then people say, well, you can go to work Subway for $15 an hour. Yeah, but Subway's not paying 27.5% and para are 3%.
Well,
And you're not paying the health insurance like what we've got and all those others.
when it comes to fire department, I mean, I remember seeing we were paying under $10 an hour and $9 an hour. I'm going, who the heck would want to work for $9 an hour, putting your life on the line as a firefighter? But the way they get paid is completely different than any other normal,
Right.
2,080 hours a week. Because although when you work, you're working your tail off, but then there's a lot of downtime and
There's not as much downtime as you
well,
think.
correct me if I'm wrong, but they get paid because they're living at the station. They get paid for their sleeping time and.
Correct, but
and all that.
50% of our calls, and we've got it documented, are after it's 5 o'clock whenever.
Oh, you don't get 8 hours of sleep. Believe me, I
understand that, yes.
yeah, you can't like go to bed at this time, wake up 8 hours later. I get that.
And one thing that we were looking at is in the pay study that we did, so Roswell starts their non-certs at $15.50, I believe is what it said, and our Alamogordo's at $16.01, so, you know, and we're at 13, so if somebody wants to be a firefighter, would they want to come to Ruidoso at $13 an hour versus going somewhere else for a little bit more, plus the cost of living, so we're just trying to make it a little more,
Right. Okay, so that was the
that's
reason
part of the issues, yeah, yes.
behind it.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And Councilmember Coughlin, if I could, to your point on where are we at, what do we get to, who's gonna stop someone else from asking? I think, when we've had this discussion as village staff, one of the items that we believe this does, especially at the $15 to $16 rate, is it kind of brings everyone now to a similar point across the board in the village. My recommendation to our team while we were talking was, once we get to this point, there's probably one or two more groups that we can truly identify that probably need increases, that we know should be impacted. After that, my recommendation to our team was that we probably do a 5-year program. And we have to do an initial study to say, where is everybody at and where are we going as a village? Not just comparing ourselves to a community. It goes back to what the mayor said and what can we actually fund over time? I mean, we have to make sure we're responsible fiduciarily as well. And so having that plan, having that review, knowing incrementally what our cost of living is, knowing incrementally what our services cost, knowing all of those things should really go into what our true cost of service should be and what our true salary should be. I don't think we have that just yet. I think if we get there, we'll have, one, a more competitive wage. Two, we'll be under the 75% amount on what we should be for salaries across the board. And three, it will give us an accurate pay plan on where we want to be in the next 5 years without pricing ourselves out of the market and without making it an unfundable mandate that we just can't move on. But we have to do that work first. This gets us there. It gets us at least almost there in everyone being at a similar pay band structure. That's what the benefit of this is. So fighting back against other departments, or not fighting back, but saying, hey, hold off until we get there. I think we need to do that because we don't have a plan in place to just say, okay, who's next? That's not what we have, and I think we should. Would you agree with that? Sure.
Well, how many of these pay plan reviews have we been through?
Oh, my gosh.
We've looked at pay for performance, we've looked at the 2%, 1%, everything that this council can do to increase pay, benefits, and all that kind of stuff. The next thing is gonna be when we get to the point where it's not affordable. And we're peeking over the fence on that right now. No matter how good our GRT, we're not the county. You know, we don't have guaranteed income. We have to do a good job with the businesses and work with.
Listening.
The GRT is what we live on. And so those are things that we're looking at, the national economy, what do we got to do to keep things moving forward? And so, You know, it's not gonna end, and it's always been consistent since we've been here. How do we think outside the box? I mean, we've had that conversation until you just have to do what you have to do. And then I think what we're gonna start doing is educating the public on why we're having to do these things. Because they're gonna have a pay increase, or a fee increase on their water bills that are gonna include all the different things. I mean, everybody sees the grapple trucks out right now, and you see the pine needles flying. Those things are not cheap. That's a level of service that we do, a lot of communities don't do. So this is level of service, and nobody ever asks how much when you got a fire. Okay, nobody asks that question. So we have to be prepared. We want the best people that we can get. We want the best for the people that we have, all those, because they're our friends, our family, our neighbors, and all that other stuff. But it still does come with an equilibrium that we, you know, and we talk about the municipal league all the time, and formulas and all this other stuff, and then it gets blown up, because somebody does something somewhere without thinking. And then, of course, we all have to follow into the well. So that's where we're at.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, also, you know, with our benefit package, as the mayor, as the council knows, and it, you know, this last few years, we've been hit with on our para with that
Oh, yeah.
0.5% each year on the employee
Because of
side.
the state's deficit.
Yes, so we're having to work on that. And then with the insurance, health insurance, you never know from year to year also. So those are also items that affect our overall budget.
Well, there was a time in the past when the big push here in the village was increasing benefits.
Yeah.
So we've got excellent benefits that a lot of people are jealous of. But then the shift came in that, well, people don't really care too much about the benefits, they want the pay, but the benefits are still there. And then now we're bringing this up, and the whole, you know, instead of balancing it back out again, because you can't really take away those benefits, even though they're saying a lot of newer people don't care so much about the benefits, they want the pay, because they want to pay their bills.
Yep.
So I'm not saying that none of our employees are not worth it. I'm just saying we've got to look at so that this village isn't filing for bankruptcy in 5 years and then having to make massive cuts to service and
RIFs, reduction in forces.
yeah, I just layoffs. That's where I come from, is looking at that, and I'm only here for a little bit longer, but that doesn't matter, as I'm still looking towards the future and the health of this community, and how can we continue to do that and balance all the needs. I mean, there's a lot of needs, but please do not think that I'm saying that you guys aren't worth it, that everybody here is very valuable within this village. But we just have to figure out how do we do it? You know, 75%, yeah, I used to be on a school board, and 75 to 80%, you know, that was it. Your total cost of employees doesn't leave a whole lot for everything else.
Well, private business can't operate that way.
No.
Mayor, you brought up a good point, and I believe that the public services and public safety definitely need to be recognized as far as being paid. As far as retention, as far as the health of the village there, but like you said, that we do live off a GRT, and that we could have a very flexible, or let's just say not a flexible, roller coaster ride. So I would kind of like Judy to prepare something like, say, give us a scenario of a financial outlook, say if we did go with these steps here, or at least the lower one, that what would it look like if our GRT dropped 5%? What would our health be? Because those are scenarios that could very well happen. And we as a governing body have to not only look out for the employees, but also for the village as a whole. So I'd like that.
And the public doesn't understand. I mean, somebody went on Facebook and was complaining that, you know, that this group is not getting paid, all this stuff. And so I was contacted by homeowners. And when I sat down with them and explained to them to the best of my ability how firemen's pay works, and here's what they're getting paid, and they're like, oh, well, they didn't understand that, and the benefits, and the whatever. They said, oh, my God, I had no idea. And so I said, well, so how would you do it? Are you willing to pay additional in fees or whatever. And then it became, well, I already pay too much. And so that's when you get down to it. Everybody wants to pay everybody until it comes out of their pocket. And then all of a sudden they're like, wow. And so that's the reality of it, that we're taking from somebody to pay for this, or we're having to earn it from somebody. So we have to continually do a better job, which depends on Parks and Rec, to put on a good show for all the tourists that come into town, to keep the sidewalks clean when it snows, so people can get in the businesses. You know, nobody's an island. There's not one department any more important than the other, I can assure you. Without every department and everybody doing their job, it does not work. You know, you've heard the conversation, who's the boss? The brain says, I'm the boss. The heart says, without me, you can't pump. You know, so who ended up being the boss, don't you? Who? The butthole. Because he just closed it up and suffocated everybody else to death. But anyway, that's another story. That's what I'm telling you about. There's no easy answer. Okay?
Parks and Rec, Mr. Mayor, Parks and Rec brings all these people in, and our call volume will go up.
Yeah, and so it's all a vicious cycle, but it all has to boil down to total revenue generated and how profitable we are. So it's not easy to do, and this council has always figured out how to make that move and, you know, and still do it prudently, that we're on a survival. And I appreciate all the hard work. A lot of thought goes into it, and I think that charging for services that we're putting out with the fire inspector is going to be a must for sure. So if there's no more questions, we'll move on. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Ladies and
guys.
gentlemen. Then we'll move on to discussion on Ruidoso Fire Department Emergency Medical System Project to apply for funding in the amount of $35,000 for new automated external defibrillators.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, this is a project that is going through the Department of Health Emergency Medical Services. They put out a request to all departments to submit a plan to try to help the departments with recuperate some costs or buy equipment. So this is what this is. It's for this plan would supply $35,000 to replace our AEDs that we carry on our fire trucks, and it'd be about 10 AEDs for a cost of about $35,000. And these AEDs will be the same type that the ambulance service is using at this point in time. So our pads and hookups are going to be the same. We can just go from one machine to another, and ours are coming to the end of their life here within about another year. So we're trying to jump ahead of the curve and get our old AEDs replaced prior to that happening.
Any questions?
Consent.
Consent?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 3, discussion and recommendation from the Airport Advisory Board to adopt a fuel pricing formula for airport fuel sales that follow the market but still keeps the village of Ruidoso competitive with other airports and allows the village to maintain revenues needed to operate the Sierra Blanca Regional Airport. Yes, good morning,
Morning,
gentlemen.
Mayor, Council. Back again, this one will be way easier. Basically, the recommendation from the airport board was to try and pass a formula that makes us more competitive. What we're gonna be doing is, weekly, both the manager and the admin will be reviewing, what the average cost is across the board, from AirNav, excuse me, which lists all the prices regionally within a 200-mile radius of us. We're gonna take the high, the low, come up with the average, and subtract 5% from that. And that's gonna be our formula that we move forward with. That'll not only make us competitive, but that'll put us right in the middle from a revenue generating stream of where we're at. So right now, we originally set the $1.50 that we were looking at on Hunter Low Lead. The board asked us to reduce that back down to 75 cents, which we did. While we were up in gallons, we lost money just due to the fact that we had reduced the overall amount that we were bringing in. That cost is fixed on the price that we pay for our original fuel on. So we'll still keep that original fuel cost and recovery as part of what we're looking at, but this will make us much more competitive within the region. And as it fluctuates, if gas prices spike, we'll still be the lower end of sides, but we'll still be collecting those revenues. So that's gonna be our recommendation on a formula.
So I don't know, what was the reaction of the advisory board? Because when they initially came to they were recommending that we totally eliminate the fee for fuel, so now that there's.
Eliminate the fee for fuel?
Well,
The markup.
the markup. The markup for fuel.
Well, they wanted to get rid of the $1.50 and take it to 50 cents.
In discussions with the board, that was their general recommendation. The other item that we're gonna be taking back to the board, they've asked us for a discussion on finances, what that looks like, why we have to kind of recoup costs in that perspective as well. And so we're working on a spreadsheet that will show what our actual costs are and where we're actually in the red and how the general fund has to supplement some of those costs to bring them back into the black, or to break even. And so, this formula, they were agreeable with because it brings us back into the positive on how we collect fuel.
The concern I have with the way you describe this is we're taking the retail prices, we're gonna take the high and the low, average them out, and then go 5% below.
Yes, sir.
But that doesn't take into account at all what our costs are. Because during previous discussion, we were saying how our costs are higher because we've got more transportation up here, and costs depend upon volume, and delivery cost. So that's my concern, is how can you set a retail price when you're not even taking into account what your costs are?
So we're taking into account our overall costs. They're actually built in generically to the formula. We've taken our taxes, we've taken our fuels, we've taken everything that we've done.
But from what you said, as far as what they want to do, is just take other retail prices and then average it out and come up with a price based on that, and has nothing to do with our cost.
So we're still gonna be keeping track of our costs. The rack prices, when they come up on every week, we're gonna take a look at that, and we're gonna look at where our formula falls. So the rack price is what the cost of fuel is at the time, and then we also have our cost that we paid for whenever we bought it. So I think we bought this fuel at
This load here, I don't know what we paid for it. Been a while since we got it. The last 2 weeks, I've looked at the rack prices. And so last week, the week of the 26th, the rack price was $4.67 a gallon. And yesterday, when I got the rack price for this week, starting today, it's $4.57 a gallon.
And we were at 593.
So, yes, we're at $5.93 from a retail price, not
Right.
necessarily our cost price.
Right.
And we were the lowest price, in the region, which is one of the recommendations that was asked for by the board. In doing that, we roughly keep with, our internal, concern of making sure we don't dip below our costs that we paid for, trying to pay for all of our taxes, which is roughly 40 cents. But when we look at the retail price and when we look at that formula, it keeps us above that level. So as long as we're at that level and we're not impacting our original cost, we're gonna at least move on maintaining that formula that was recommended. If it ever drops below a certain area where we're either below our cost price, we would have to come back and make a recommendation that it stops at that point.
Yes.
Because we don't want to go into the red on losing.
Well, and the other day, like you were saying, 593 is what we were at, and we thought we were the lowest. And I had one of our people flying into Las Cruces, and he paid 550. So there's always gonna be somebody, but if we're, at average or below average, then we're always gonna be considered at this point. Now, this does not affect jet fuel.
Correct.
This is just low lead.
Yeah, just the piston.
If I may, Mayor, on the deal with Las Cruces, $5.50, that was for self-serve fuel.
Self-serve, and that's another, are you gonna go into that on this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the things that we also identified is there's two different services. There's full service and then there's self-serve. Because we're a full-service entity, we're also looking at how being that competitive entity in that point. So Las Cruces is in fact a self-serve, where they go out and fill it on their own, and that is at a lower price. So you do see all self-serve at a much, not a much lower price, but at a percentage of a lower price. On full-service competitive pricing, market-wise, that's where we're gonna be that 5% lower than all full-service costs. But we won't be competing with self-service costs.
Right, and we can't, and it's super nice that time I got to fly in out here, I mean, the guys show up in the truck, they fill that puppy up, wipe it all down, and then you're done, instead of having to go do it yourself. It's more than just your car, so I think people will pay, but the plan that we've, eventually with the master plan that we're working on, talking about the ability to move the fuel farm,
Yes, sir.
put in a self-serve, to start helping generate some revenue out there too.
And those are all things that we're moving forward on. Obviously, those are different items with grants and things that we're getting for the airport, but just on the fuel cost, that's a formula discussion.
Okay.
I would say that next week, because the way that this agenda memo is, there's nothing specific as far as what that fuel price formula is. It just says to accept their fuel price formula. I would like to see something that specifies what that formula is, because otherwise I can't support something that's a blank page, basically.
We'll go ahead and put that in, and then at the very end, I'd also like to add that note that says if it ever drops below
Yeah.
cost price, we would freeze it at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, regular item?
Yes.
Item number,
Thank you.
thank you, good job. Item number 4, discussion on lease with Wagner Equipment Company for Caterpillar 420 backhoe loader through Sourcewell contract for term of 60 months in the amount of $158,906.51, including GRT. And I remember when we'd have this discussion for 2 weeks, if we're gonna lease or we're gonna buy or whatever, so it's real easy right now.
Yep.
So,
Mayor, Council, like you said, we've had this discussion before. I believe the leasing is the way to go. You know, we buy a piece of equipment, and after 5 years, it's pretty much junk. So every 5 years, we can release a new piece of equipment and keep on going from there.
any questions? Consent?
Consent.
I just have one question, Adam. Here, additional terms $14 per hour if 176 hours is exceeded in 28 consecutive days. Is that a constant 28-day rolling?
It's consecutive days. That's one of the things that I called on. I did catch that, is, let's say, I mean, I don't think we'll use 176 hours in 28 days regardless.
Right.
But it's gotta be consecutive days. You know, if there's
So any 28 consecutive days if we exceed it?
yes.
And then, once we've done that, then it could shift over a few days and create a new 28-day window? Okay. Okay.
Consent?
It's just weird. Yeah.
Okay, well, that way it's not on a big project constantly.
Yeah, no, I get it.
We have a different use for them than construction companies. Item number 5, discussion on contract for services between the County of Lincoln and the Village of Ruidoso to provide library services to all citizens within the boundaries of Lincoln County. County of Lincoln to provide a total of $12,500 paid in 2 semi-annual payments. Yes, ma'am, Di?
Mayor, council, this is the agreement we do every year with the county for the grant money that they give us. I go every May to speak with the commission and ask for funds. This is an increase of $2,500 from the year before.
Okay.
And it's just so that we provide services to more than just the
Sure.
residents of Ruidoso.
That's good. I knew it was more, but that's pretty good more.
Yes, it is.
I appreciate that, Denise.
Consent?
Consent.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Item number 6, discussion on adoption of Resolution 2023-34, municipal officer election, March 5th, 2024. Yes, ma'am?
Mayor and members of the council, this is the resolution declaring the municipal officer elections that will be coming in March of 2024. The resolution identifies the open positions and also the ballot question, which will be the general obligation bond of the $3 million that's been done in the past. So it'll declare like I said, the open positions and the ballot question, and this resolution is forwarded to the county and the Secretary of State's office, and then a proclamation will be done, I believe in December. This is the start of the election process.
And then you'll also, in there'll be a description that it's the top vote getters for, since we're having 1 2-year the top three will get the 4-year.
So this resolution will not explain that, although maybe I can add that appropriate language. The ballot, when the ballots come out, the ballot will explain that there's 4 positions open. Although we all know that 3 of them are 4 years, 1 of them is 2. What the ballot will say is vote for no more than 4. And then the top 3 votes that come in go to the 3 4-year position, and the person with the lowest number of votes gets the 2-year position. So I'll do my best to maybe.
Right.
Well, that's the state telling us what to do again.
Yeah,
man.
and that is brand new.
past.
That's for the first time. That legislation was passed earlier this year. So I will do my best to put some appropriate language in there, but when the proclamation and stuff starts coming out, and I'll be doing some public service announcements and try my best to talk on the Monday morning with the mayor as often as possible, and we'll get the information out the best that we can as to how the Secretary of State's office will allow us to do that.
Does that have to be regular? Because we're gonna make.
Yeah, I think so.
I would put it
Yes,
as regular,
please.
because I've already been getting questions about it.
Well,
Especially
about
with
why
the-
we haven't appointed, when we're gonna appoint, not gonna
Well,
appoint.
with the November election coming up, it's like,
Why-
when's the
Why aren't
council
you guys
election?
on there? And they
Right,
said, no,
and-
we're local.
We kept doing what we've always done.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But state, this is another encroachment that before long, there's only how many municipalities left?
11,
11 that do our own.
and then I'll be posting a calendar of election, of the dates for the election, and I'll post that on the website.
Okay. Item number 7, discussion on award of ITB number 2024-003B, monthly printing and delivery of the Village of Ruidoso Insider to Millet XL in the amount of $71,280.42, including New Mexico GRT. Good morning, Eddie.
Good morning, Mayor and council members. Okay, we received one bid, and that was from Millet XL. To be awarded $71,280.42, including GRT. This does not include shipping
Postage.
and postage. Yeah, that came out to be an estimate of $108,000. So that's a difference of $36,716.58, which gives a cost of shipping per each insider of about 5.3 cents. So that is something that will be billed or invoiced to us each month. The insiders will be shipped out between the 1st and 3rd of each month. So moving forward, I'd like to see if we can move it forward.
Any questions?
So are we doing first class mailing, or are we doing bulk?
Bulk.
Bulk mailing,
Okay.
from what I understand.
Boy, if we were doing first class,
I
that'd be
know.
like 5 times that amount.
And y'all remember, this was gonna be like 2 issues,
Yeah.
and then the rest of it was gonna be digital, but I don't know, there's not a month goes by I don't get.
Somebody said
I was
something
gonna
great
say,
is
there's-
done.
Thank you for keeping us informed and all that. So I think it's well worth it.
So
Mayor-
do I.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, we've been using this company here for over a year now, and they do a fantastic job when it comes to working with our deadlines and meeting the deadlines, where we went out and procured some other, even the state purchasing or the state printing, and the mayor and I were told they don't, they have a tough time meeting just on a quarterly basis. This is a monthly basis, so it's very unique.
Okay,
Consent?
consent?
Yes, sir.
Okay, item number 8, discussion on contract for monthly, that's the contract for monthly printing and delivery of the Village of Ruidoso Insider with Millet XL awarded via invitation to bid, ITB, the amount of $71,280.42. So we'll do that on
Regular.
regular, okay? Is that the way we keep doing it? I still get confused. Thank you, Eddie.
Thank you.
And Eddie's entertaining movie people, getting all that set up, so he's doing a really good job on that. So we're gonna have a nice Hallmark-ish movie being shot here next month. Item number 9, discussion on task order RFP 2019-002P-07, Amendment 1 Moon Mountain Trail and the Links Rehabilitation with Bohannon Houston, Inc. for the extension of time from 65 calendar days to 65 working days, and to increase the contract price by $72,698.32. The amended contract price total is $233,479.98, including New Mexico GRT. Yes, gentlemen.
Good morning, Mayor. Good morning, Council. So this is with our construction management and bidding company, Bohannon Houston. So this is an increase. It's partially because we combined the projects. They were two separate projects and we combined them. Part of this increase is the need to go out to rebid 3 times. That cut away at their original contract. And so we need to increase it for that. And then also the working days versus calendar days. With combining the projects is going to take a little bit longer, and then also it's going to be pushing, due to us receiving more funds and waiting on the state to get us the grant agreements and things like that, so we can make sure we get reimbursed for all of this project. It is going to push the project back to spring for the majority of the project. And so if we did 65 calendar days, from the day they start in the fall, because they're going to try to get some of it done in the fall, that would start their clock. With it being 65 working days, there can be a pause put in there, so when they can pick it back up in spring, we can complete the project.
And they're going to start Moon Mountain to encumber the funds in the process, and then the links will come in afterwards.
Correct.
Mr. Coughlin?
It's like when we discussed this, we were combining the two projects together at that point. So now all of a sudden, there's extra fee because we're combining the two projects?
Well, the first time we went out, there wasn't any response.
Right. But when we had that discussion the last time and we approved.
It was to get somebody to bid on it. It was a big enough job they bid on it.
But there were, then, what was it, 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, something? It came up and we had 2 separate projects, one for the links and one for that, and it was gonna be some god-awful amount. Because I remember arguing, we need the links, I don't know so much about that, but we had to do the 2 together.
To get a contractor.
So we did that.
Yep.
And now there's an extra fee because we're combining the 2?
Well, a lot of it was because of the rebidding process that it cost us to go out for. And then there was an additional.
And Mayor Crawford, members of the council, this is for additional construction observation fees.
Oh, yeah, from Bohannon, Houston,
Yes.
for them to watch it.
So when Councilor Coughlin, when we reapplied for some additional funds, we did include this amount in the grant, so.
Okay.
So this amount is fully covered by the additional funds in that grant that we received.
Okay.
And then it became a timing issue because they didn't want to put down much like what's happened on Suttereth, that's been pushed to next year now. They didn't want to do the links, but they could work on the dirt path and then keep their guys here and keep them engaged so that they'll be here to do this job. And that's with Mesa Verde.
Correct.
Okay, it just wasn't clear because it talks about increased scope of work, but it doesn't really define what that scope
Well, yeah,
was, what increased.
And the part of that is those added days going from 65 working days to 65 calendar days to 65 working days. It does actually add several days in here that they'll have to have somebody on site because of weekends.
Yeah, they've got
weekends.
per diem and all that kind of stuff. That's gonna increase.
Where do you want it?
Consent.
Consent? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen. Great job this last weekend with all the baseballers. Man, they were everywhere.
Yeah, they were.
Item number 10, discussion on agreement with White Sands Construction, Inc. through statewide price agreement number 30-00000. As Councilor Jackson say, 05 or 5, something like that. 23-00070 on the Horton Complex Building Renovations Project located at 237 Service Road for base bid Phase 1A additive alternates number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Okay, Chief.
Well, Mayor, Council, Chief and I will work on this together. I did receive just during this meeting, the updated proposal from White Sands. But I'll have Chief begin with with the base bid, and then we'll go through each one of the additive alternates.
Okay. What you're looking at is what they proposed for the 1A portion for the completion, and then the re-stucco and redoing the windows on the Horton complex. That would include also the paving of the parking lot on the front with the curb and gutter.
And Mayor Crawford, members of the council, when we received the original proposal from White Sands, we did receive, as one of the additive alternates, was stuccoing only a portion of the Horton, not including the Boys and Girls Club in behind the Horton complex. So I did ask them to submit another proposal. We wanted to do a complete project and do all the stuccoing and the painting. And there's some light fixtures in the back behind also that will be included. And then the chief was requesting a small area to be fenced by the dispatch center. And that came in as an additional additive alternate. So right now, a price that I'll be updating this for the council, we're looking about 1.3 for the base bid and all the additive alternates to move forward on this project.
And the portion of the fencing that I'm requesting, it's a section kind of like a L, and it's 20 foot by 12 foot. And it's, once we got moved in there, we seen some people in the back, near the tower. So all it'll do is isolate people being able to get near the generator, the tower, or any of the doors. So it's just a security right there. And it's right at the edge of the court where the Sally Port is, and then it would connect into the existing fence where the tower is.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Chief, wasn't there discussion at one time about fencing that whole back?
Yes, sir, but that's been taken out of the project for right now. So it's put on hold. So the easy fix, not, whenever that comes available and they start working on that again, we don't know when that's going to be. So that would be the easy alternative to take care of that right now.
How and where, what's the plan for the dispatchers then to be parking, to get in and out?
So for right now, we have, there's a spot identified in the front, and they're walking through the front door. We've had the sidewalks and lighting put there along with some video, but we've been working with Councilor Coughlin because they started parking in an area that, they needed to come back about 15 foot. But some of them have been parking in the back where it was originally, where they were originally going to park. I mean, it's kind of, it's uneven and the ground's uneven and stuff like that, but they are parking there in the back, which is a little easier for them and a little more secure for them to be going in that back door instead of the front. But they are parking there. It would be the southwest side there, that southwest corner there near where the dumpsters are. So in the daytime, whenever the Boys and Girls Club is in service, they've been instructed to park in the parking lot further back near where the old shop building was that they just removed. And then in the nighttime, they can park a little closer, so that way they're not having to walk so far in the dark.
And what if they get there at noon and their shift ends at midnight? Now they've parked in the dark spot.
It's, we told them to call for an officer if they feel uneasy at any time, even if there's light out or anything like that, and if they need an officer out there, because we do have issues in that area, within half mile with vagrants and other calls of service that we go handle in there that could make them feel uneasy. So we told them that if they need an officer to be there, because we've done that for banks in town. We've done that for many, many people that they'll call and be like, hey, there's somebody out here in the parking lot. Would you mind sending an officer? Well, our staff walks out. So that's not an issue.
Again, if it can ever come up, I think the potential for problems, if there's not a fence and a gate all the way down there, when football games or events are going on, the people they're gonna see a spot to park, and you're gonna have them all over the backside of that building.
And we've already, had that discussion about that because, the sign's like everybody else in society. The sign is there for everybody else but me. So I'm going to park right here where there's an open spot. So.
You said people you've been having people in the back part of that building. Have you identified how they're getting in?
As far as, so one day the back door in the gymnasium was opened up and there was somebody that walked down that ramp there in the back, so.
So that's a
Yeah, and we've been working with Matt, telling him, I know we can't weld it shut so nobody can come out because of the safety issues that are with it, but.
according to the state fire marshal, that is no longer an exit. That's why we took the emergency exit off of that. He would be okay if, the state fire marshal said they'd be okay if that was sealed up.
Okay, I'll get with Matt Beard and assign it to him to
Yeah,
take care of.
double check with AC, but it was not, there's adequate egress coming out through the hallways and through the lobby. And that's why we took off, that's why we had the emergency exit taken off of that. And there's a sign placed on that door that says not an exit.
We'll take a look at it. I'll get with Ross.
Yeah.
I'll get with them and see if we can't make that a permanent closure.
And I believe I have an email that states that.
Okay,
So let me know if I need to help with that,
perfect. If you could forward it to me if you remember, that'd be helpful.
if I remember.
Thank you.
We'll stand for any other questions regarding this, continuing on with Phase 1A in this proposal.
Any other questions? Where do you want them?
Regular,
Okay.
because we're still getting some more information.
Yes, we'll have all the numbers also in the plan in place, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, item number 11, discussion on Amendment 1 to the Water Conservation Plan. Ladies,
Good morning, Mayor and Council. So this is to amend our water conservation plan that was done in 2015. We have to do this, we had to do this as part of our, in order to continue to be eligible for Water Trust Board funds through the New Mexico Finance Authority. And so it's just pretty much stating that we're part of the Lower Pecos Valley Regional Water Plan, and these are the actions the village has done in relation to that plan. And so they just said this amendment, I did show them this, they were fine with this amendment. And so it'll just be attached to the back of the water conservation plan.
anybody have any questions? You looked over, it's nearly 90 pages long. Hewitt Zollers, we have them on a contract for, what do they do?
This was 2015. I haven't worked with them since.
Mayor Crawford, members of the council, that's when Ray De La Vega worked with them, and they worked on our different water plans and water plan, master plans and things like that back then.
So this
Ray was
is-
the one that helped us with our rate analysis when he was with Wilson and Company.
Now he's with his own deal, but so this is just updated?
Yeah, so sorry, let me get the actual name. The Office of State Engineer, Water Use and Conservation Bureau, they said we just need to write a short little paragraph stating that it was an amendment to that water conservation plan that can be attached. And that will satisfy the requirement to continue making us eligible.
Okay.
Yeah, it's less than half a page.
The only concern I have is in the amendment where it says the plan is recommending that municipalities meter domestic wells. What is the purpose of that? I mean, first of all, I don't put it past me, the state's wanting us to regulate
Do
more
their
stuff
job.
that they don't even do themselves. I mean, that's what's irritating me about it, but what is the purpose of, do you know anything of that? or-
So in the regional water plan, I just went through all of their recommendations, and so these are things they would like to implement. Some haven't fully been implemented yet. There was a lot of things in the regional water plan that they directed towards different locations, and so the only one that actually related to the village that we could move forward with was the municipalities metering domestic wells, reuse wastewater, perform water audits and leak detection tests, and develop a water conservation plan. And that was a grouping, that was a one group, and that was the title for that recommendation. And so I put that in there, and then I put like what we're doing as a municipality to comply with that.
Well, I know I'll be asking to strike that.
Well, it's a recommendation, not a requirement.
I know, and that's
So-
but even at that point, I mean, I know a lot of people with their wells, and they'll come unglued. But again, if any of this language is changed, does that still eliminate us from
Yeah, so
applying?
this is directly stated within the Lower Pecos Valley Regional Water Plan, that sentence directly, and so if we strike that, we're no longer complying with their, water
Standard.
plan, and so now we're not eligible.
For Water Trust Board.
I guess what Rifle's asking is, Mayor Pro Tem, did you submit that to the state for review to
I
get kind
just,
of a pre-approval?
I just submitted, I typed this up and I showed this to them, to see if they wanted anything changed, and they were happy with exactly what we wrote. And this is just a recommendation on their part. The Lower Pecos Valley Regional Water Plan is a massive document.
Right.
And so they have a whole bunch of recommendations that apply to the different municipalities or, the agricultural users within the region. And so we're just, how, as a village, are we, relating to this plan? And so we're just stating, that we monitor our wells. We
Right.
submit
We do
all of our information to the
I agree
Office of
with
State
all that.
Engineer. We continue, to perform our water audits on a yearly basis. And so we're just stating within this recommendation itself that they stated in their regional water plan, what we're doing as a village to kind of help comply with that. And so as a village, we are submitting our reads. We're doing what we can do.
Right,
as
I
a-
understand all that. We've been doing that for years and stuff like that. It's just when we talk about domestic wells, that's a property right.
So that's where the Office of State Engineer would have to go in, and they would have to enforce that part. We're just doing what we can do as a municipality.
Right.
Counselor Salas, the majority of the domestic wells within the Village of Ruidoso or right outside the Village of Ruidoso, especially the ones that are like, let's say Gavilan Canyon.
Right.
Gavilan, all those wells like Halsell Park, for instance, we have a meter on their well, is one of ours because they are tied into sewer. So we can
Right.
actually charge them. And then like some of the areas, Janet Drive, that private water system, they do have their own meters for their wells. And then the Office of the State Engineer has mandated that a domestic well, for instance, Sutter's Drive, the new one that we've.
And the one on Carrizo.
The one on Carrizo, they do have their own meter. They mandated them to put in a meter for the Office of State Engineer to read that meter, for their water rights.
And the Upper Canyon, I don't know that those have it yet.
Basically, what Ashley wrote up right there, it does comply. It's not like we're gonna go out and then put meters on, the wells that were grandfathered in 1940s or whatever, but.
Right.
Majority of the wells we have within the Village of Ruidoso, I'd say 95, almost 99% of them do have meters, either ours or theirs on them.
Okay.
I don't know who reads them.
Yeah, that's the other question. I mean, who's responsible for them and reading them? or
That'd be
what?
the state engineer.
So,
Yeah, because I know for instance, Fawn Ridge.
Yep.
That's a-
Right.
I know the Office of State Engineer does come out on a quarterly basis and take the reads off those meters. So, they may miss some, but we are compliant on our side.
well, yeah, I knew our part, the municipality was all good. Again, I'm just saying, for domestic well users, whether anyway.
Where do you want it?
Ashley, let me ask you a question. It says, the plan is recommending the municipalities meter domestic wells, so it's recommending. If we were to decide to make it mandatory, that we're gonna meter all domestic wells, wouldn't that have to come back to the council to approve?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, so that's not something that your department can just unilaterally say, okay, you have to do.
No, and, we would come back to council if that is something
Okay.
we would wanna do. As of right now, we're meeting our requirements, so.
Right.
And like Adam said, we have the meters on the wells that are connected into the sewer. My goal is in the future, to start looking at, seeing what wells we actually have in the municipality. I wanna kinda get a list together, just that way we're aware of what wells and.
We do have those.
So just kinda getting them mapped out and
'Cause we
everything.
get calls on them every summer. They're watering their dang yard.
I've been dealing with a lot of recommendations versus requirements lately, and what what I say is, oh, it's a recommendation, okay, thank you for your
Forget about it,
recommendation.
yeah, it's a shall or must.
That's it,
Yeah.
you know, but
May.
if it's requirement, then that's something different. So to me, this doesn't bother me because it's just their recommendation, that's all it is.
And I could understand that, but that's where it's the first step to become a requirement.
Well,
That's all I could see on there. Roger Perry could get you a list of all the domestic wells.
I think, Robin passed me on a list of those, so I can give those to you.
Yeah.
There's a lot more than that. I mean, didn't realize how many's just in my neighborhood, you know? And I know they're not metered. They're not using it, they're tied in the city, but yet some of them use it for irrigation and stuff there. That's where, I'm looking to buy a water right so I could irrigate my ditch and have water run into the creek and stuff.
Down the road.
Down the road. I'll get those calls.
Okay, consent or regular?
Consent.
Yeah.
Consent. Okay, number 11, consent. Item number 12, thank you, discussion on change order number 5 with Roper Construction to increase the contract time from November 1, 2023 to December 31st, 2023 for completion of Alto 3 H1979 POD 5 and Alto 4 H1979 POD 6 well improvements project. Yes, ma'am.
Mayor and council, so this project is just to allow the contract time to be extended. The reason for this is we are currently working with Otero Electric, trying to get electrical service out there, and due to the delay of that, it's causing a delay in the timeline. So once we get the electrical connected, we'll pretty much be good to go. Roper's done all of that he's been able to do. There's a couple of parts that he's waiting on. But he did start working on putting up the fence, and so the big thing is just this electrical. And so Adam's working with Otero Electric right now to get the road put in, for the power poles, for Otero Electric to get everything installed.
And in the meantime, the trails will be back open.
We can look at that once we
I
get
thought that was part of the discussion.
Yeah, I think, Roper said he can make sure that the trails are
I knew
reopened.
Thank you.
That's something you,
That's where I would ask, and there's people that still go around the barriers and stuff. I mean, they're not really, but going on there. So I guess you answer my question, it's aerial wire. They're gonna put aerial, okay.
And I think, we went to December 31st, but, Roper thinks it'll be done before that, but we just want to give him adequate time so we can, deem it substantially completed, but we can't do that till we can test everything out.
Christella and Ashley, is there an engineer with Otero or someone that we're working with that can give us a definite timeline on that?
We're working with Jerry, I think it's Portillas.
Okay, I just think we need to
Yeah, we'll-
continue to push them and make sure they get that.
was it the transformer they were waiting on?
It's just, we were going back and forth on who was actually gonna be putting in the road. And so I think last week, we came to how we're gonna move forward with this road that Otero Electric's requiring. And so, Adam, can you?
Because it's steep grade and it's bedrock, right?
And that's that roadway there behind the dam.
So, there's gonna be a whole other road, built, or not a road, just access for Otero to set their poles. They gotta get their truck in there, their driller in there. And, it didn't specify in the contract who was responsible for actually, putting in the roads for Otero. And when I met him out there, basically they had said that they're putting them in, and then it came back and says, well, it's not in the contract. So there is a line item in the contract that Roper can actually use to put in those roads. So we're gonna use that line item, and he'll go put in the roads, and then it sounds like they're ready to go ahead and, set the poles. They're ready to go.
Who was the engineer that designed that project? Was that,
That was Mosley Corbin.
and I know that if they're not really thinking, they wouldn't think about access, but they should, again. Okay, what do you want? Discussion or regular?
Consent.
Consent? I mean, I said the same thing, didn't I? Sorry. Okay, thank you, ladies. Item number 13, discussion on task order RFP 2022-004P-SMA-02 Amendment 1 Master Planning and Rate Analysis with Souder Miller and Associates for the extension of time from September 2023 to June 2024 and changing the village contract.
As council had requested, we're trying to keep on top of the timelines on the task order. So the other portions of the master plan have been completed for each of the individual sections for solid waste, for the water, and for the treatment plant, but the portion that's related to the rate analysis has not been completed. So I'm requesting that we extend the task order through June 2024, as we're still reviewing the rate increase and the recommendations. So I was requesting that we extend it through June 2024 and change the village contact to myself, because it was still listed as Eric Boyda.
Okay.
Consent.
Consent? Okay, thank you very much. And then we'll move over to the agenda as proposed. Everything is the same with the approval of the minutes, certification of the records destruction. Item number 3, approval of request to schedule a public hearing on November 14th, 2023 for ordinance 2023-13, an ordinance authorizing the issuance of the Village of Ruidoso, New Mexico General Obligation Bond Series 2023 in the aggregate principal amount of $1.5 million for the purpose to enlarge, improve, and extend the production and distribution components of the village's water system, providing that the Series 2023 bonds will be payable from ad valorem taxes levied on all taxable property within the village. Any questions? Public input, of course, mayoral reports, presentation of new employees and promotions, presentation of employee of the department and of the quarter, update on the the Metropolitan Redevelopment Plan from Sam, update on the New Mexico 48 and Sutter repaving project. That'll be quick. Boards and commission appointments, we have none. I don't think we have any openings. If anybody knows of any, we need to let us know. Manager's report, Wingfield Heritage House Museum will have a report from Stephanie. We're making a lot of progress on that. That's exciting. The Ruidoso Adventure Tours, that's coming up this next week. Aspen Fest. And so that's going to be exciting.
Yep.
Update on Parks and Recreation 2023 summer season. So we'll get a report from the dynamic duo. One of you is more dynamic than the other. That pink shirt, have you seen that? Come on, T-Bone. Oh, is that what it is? On a lot of the stuff that you guys in your department has done, and just give us some numbers on the WIBIT and some final overalls that we look at. And you did an unbelievable job. I can't tell you the compliments on the baseball tournament this last week with over 1,000 kids and 5,000 to 6,000 extra people in there. It's beautiful. Did a great job. Update on broadband project. We're still having issues. I know the chief is fit to be tied. I don't know if your 911's working yet. So we're still trying to get that tied in. We went all the way to the head poobah, Danny Ferguson. Had a conversation with him yesterday. Man, this week is...
And Chief and I had a conversation with the Department of Finance Director. He was here for the softball tournament or the baseball over the weekend. So, and Johnny Montoya will be here in person to give an update on the broadband.
He's been with the state for a long time, and now he's with Windstream Kinetic. And a lot of it is phone calls you're probably getting from Cascade Company that's around town. Yep. People are wondering what's going on all the digging. And so instead of me just calling at them every day, what they're doing over here, what's going on, then we'll get an update on where we're at. And so, because people are wondering if it's in my neighborhood, can I go ahead and get it? And so,
Because I'm one of those guys. I was going to ask that because they're up in the meadows now, and they were boring, and now they're tunneling, and people are asking me, hey, are we getting that? Is it coming? I said, I don't know.
You know, some people are getting it as we're speaking. I mean, I don't know that they're actually getting hooked up on it just yet, but it's in their neighborhoods, and so a lot of work on that. And then to talk about over here on Country Club, what's that area? No, up here where they're going to have to do it overhead, Adam. Where you? What?
Up on McBride area.
Yeah, McBride area. I get that area of town. It's country club but we call it something else sometimes. It's gonna have to be overhead up there, they said. So anyway, just some distinctions on things like that. So hopefully we'll get that done. Public hearings, planning commission case, rezoning R1 to C3 located at 207 Eagle Drive. Okay, remember when we went from commercial to residential? Now we're going residential to
Commercial.
C3 with no parking. So y'all will be getting the presentation on that. Public hearing for planning case, commission case, rezoning from C2 to C3 located at 2701 Suttereth, the Navajo subdivision. Again, they were trying to explain to us what I don't see, there's Zach, staring off like hog pissing out the window. I was just talking about you. Hit the building he's in over there, getting rid of the parking. Item number 3, public hearing for planning commission case, RZ 2023-268, petition to rezoning from M2 to C2 located at 135 Paradise Canyon Drive, lots F1, 8 of the Kennedy subdivision. And so all these, as you'll hear from planning and zoning at that point. Then we'll have our regular items, closed session. We do have a few items that we need to talk about in closed session. Is there anything else that we can discuss?
Mayor, I believe that the airport's going to be entering a hangar lease agreement
Okay,
for a new lessee, so would that be under consent?
yes.
Thank you, sir.
And was there any more discussion when we had the presentation last month about the RV park and?
The one on Paradise? Yeah, that's,
No, on Suttereth. Were they putting dog kennel next to it and any of that? I mean.
well, nothing has come up except for the fact that it's a permitted use. No, that's not that right. It is permitted. It's not it's permitted.
And it went through the process.
And it went through the whole processes, and in that, there was soundproofing in the plans. There were some different things like that. So I know the couple that have the RV park still are not happy about it, but it is in the deal. So next will be, I'm sure, will be barking dog calls to the police department, and then they'll be determined if the dogs are actually barking or these people being a nuisance, and
Gotcha.
and then it'll be back to civil matters, I'm sure, but I'm
Just like the
hoping-
Humane Society where they had to do the soundproofing and the.
So hopefully, we can all get
along?
Can we just all get along? Who said that? Rodney King, that's right. Anything else? And if you haven't been paying attention, the streets department's been doing a great job on their paving. If you head down Suttereth, you see all the side streets, they've got them paved up real pretty. And then I know Adam said he was gonna get that pothole out front, Phil, because I had several of you comment on it. And, is anything else? Oh, that's Josh Long over there. Oh, and then Josh's wife has given us all an invitation, Saturday night. I know some of us will be at Aspen Fest, to attend. It looks pretty interesting, the music that's gonna be out at, Spencer. So check on that. And I don't know if you've been listening to the radio show, but I'm excited about some of the things that Eddie's working on, doing real well. And then we've got the Municipal League coming up Thursday, Friday. We're going to be making a push on the what is it called, tactical planning and whatever, to really stress for home ownership, funding for the $3.5 billion. We met with AJ this week at the fire chiefs convention or whatever, and about trying to put some money in that and giving some equal footing for rural communities. And so that's going to be a big push from us on that. And if you have any other things that you want us to talk about or push, let us know, Susan or Gary, if any of those things come up.
What about the property there at Sunny Slope?
Sunny Slope, yesterday, Intergas, Zia Gas was running some lines, P&M was running some lines, because they've been running all the way up there, but they're putting in electrical for a transformer on the back of that property. And I still don't know where our house is at.
Mayor, council, the remaining, the 18th home is still in with AAA. So once we
Got it, they'll
get the
bring it.
foundation set, they'll do the delivery on it, so.
And then we'll let Berkshire Hathaway know when we're just about ready to open the door on that. And then did a walkthrough on 603 Meacham, next to the Rock House. We have a site plan, about 16 homes. I think that's a little too dense, so when we get that down, we'll present it to council. We're still waiting on a hard estimate and designs on those 2 and 3 bedroom homes. We were supposed to have a meeting last week, and it got canceled because of health issues for the individual. And then we had our 9% tax credit. Deal got canceled because of death in the family. So hopefully we'll get back on all of that so we can move forward. But that's the main thing we're really pushing for is the 9% tax credit. We'll be talking to the council about the gap funding that we have on the 9%. Staff is working to put together a presentation that we're going to do and for our greater community ask. So we'll be working on those things. So anything else? And then I know the emergency manager worked with, you. I know Joe Kenmore retired last week.
Yep.
And so a lot of it's going to fall to us to handle these things. And I know that he's been meeting with the fire chief and everyone to make sure that we're updated on all of our emergency statuses. That plan actually went into P&M because they had emergency requests for it, I guess. I don't know what was going on, but they were so happy that we had it all. And they said it was very thorough, so awesome job there. Also, if you're getting calls about insurance on homeowners, most of you probably are, I am, that they're not able to get insurance, you can get insurance. That's as long as your house is in compliance, your property is in compliance. And so those are things that are helping us move forward. And again, Dick and that department's doing a good job on getting by and inspecting those.
And they are using satellite images?
Yes.
Yeah, because I had my insurance company contacted me. It's like, well, you got some junk in the backyard. And I go, no, I don't. That was cleaned up a while ago, so.
Yeah. And my insurance actually stayed the same.
Yeah.
And actually went down because of a metal roof that we put on. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. So there are things like that. So if you get calls about that, just reach out to us and we'll try to work with different agents. We've talked to a bunch of the local ones, and with certain conditions, they can do it. So we shouldn't have any issues there. Was there anything else, Ron?
I think that was it, Mayor.
Okay, and then in your thoughts and prayers, Tanda's father passed away this morning. So they'll be going for that, so. Anything else? Nada? Going once? Twice? Okay. Well, this meeting is adjourned.
Sorry, but just wait real close.
They hired a 31-year-old at $160,000 a year. She doesn't